Hello, Brovs. We're back with Cawdor by Robinson Jeffers, a 1928 narrative poem, which is the title poem of this collection. 13. Though she was up and began to live and go out, she avoided Cawdor's presence, still fearing to be sent away if seen too often. She kept her room at mealtimes, and he was almost never about the house the other hours of the day. The first time she went out, she only walked under the storm-broken cypresses about the door and went in, but the next morning she climbed the steep to the great oak by the graves. Still weak and bloodless, dizzy with climbing, she lay face down on the dug earth, her mouth breathing against it and whispering over her father's body below. The grave retained its freshness. No rain had fallen on the red earth. She heard, after a time, a rustling and scraping noise and raised her head. It was Michael's eagle, hungrily astir in the cage. She used to feel it about this time. She used to feed it about this time. Farah saw beak and eyes in the shadow, and the dark square of the box cage against the bright blue, shining, flat ocean and the arch of sky. She stood up and walked about the oak's bole. She seemed to be counting the graves. But there was only three, the two ancient ones, enclosed with pickets, and the raw new one, unfenced. Michael came up with flesh and water for the eagle, but Farah stood on the other side of the oak until she had come. Then, coming forward from it, why, Michael, how strange to think that all these days, no matter what's happened, you still go on steadily as sunrise. My father dies of old age. I fish for death and catch failure again in hood, but you and the sunrises go on as if our tears and our deaths were nothing. He isn't glad to see you. I'd have been glad to see you, my lonely days in bed, but you never came. Michael had looked over her shoulder, her face growing white as it turned. She turned back to the cage. I didn't know you were here, she said, and poured out the dirty water from the drinking basin without turning again. I see that you hate me, Farah said. Will not speak of that. I see that your father has thought my father's grave not worthy of a mark. If the cold charity of the county had buried him, there'd be a stake with his name. Yet he was here like a man among cattle, the only mind in this ditch. Michael said nothing, but rubbed the white slime from the basin and rinsed it. And Farah said, the oak's dying. They chopped its roots. Or was it the storm that burned these baby leaves? We ought to be friends, Michael. Michael sat in the filled basin and shut the door of the cage. She opened her lips to speak and then kept silence. And Farah said, you'll listen, my dear, if you won't speak. Do you think I'll swallow these white and hating looks as if they were earned? What have I done? Tried to die? Yes, I tried twice, and that was stupid. But people are pitied for that, not hated. You were quite kind, my days of sunshine, and now you peck the feathers from the sick bird. Michael said, trembling, oh, no, not that I'm spiteful, only I can't understand. That's true, she answered. How could you? Your life has been sweet and full of ignorance. But I, when my father was drunk in town, would hear my mother take lovers in the house. There was somebody to hate. Yet they were white men. They weren't the color of Concha. No more of that. The second time I died, I almost made it, you know. They pumped me alive with their hands, and I was born again from the dark air. Since then, I can understand much that was dark before. So you, Michael, will understand many things that are dark when some wild night kills childhood in you. That's coming, but don't pray for it, my dear. Oh, Michael, that's the reason I so much want you to listen to me. The inflamed and dark season and bitterness will come, and then I dread your saying to yourself, Farah, she hated life. Farah preferred death. Farah was wise. I wasn't. At least you mustn't think so. I welched on my fate and failed, of course. Failure's my root to nature, but I am ashamed, so you must listen to me, Michael. And this page is not going to turn. My praise of life by my dead father, by the dying oak. What I've lived has not been lucky, you know. If I can praise it, who'd not? But how good it is, Michael, to live. Good for what? Ah, there's the question. For the pleasure of it. Hardly for that. Take your own life. Mine's marked. Mine's worse than usual. Your mother lies yonder. You never knew her. You missed the pleasure of knowing her. You missed the pains, too. You might have hated her. More likely, you'd have loved her dearly. You'd have been sad then to see her wasting with age and pain. Those years would come, and you'd have felt the salt fountains of loneliness drain from your eyes when the day came and she died. There's not a pleasure in the world not paid for, Michael. In pain with a penny or two for interest. But youth, they say, is a shining time, and no doubt for you the pleasures outsun the pains. Then the hair grays and the teeth blacken or drop, and the sky blackens. You've swollen ankles and shrunk thighs and horrible hanging breasts that flap like a hound's ears. Or death comes first. Oh, but I'm wrong. It's life I was praising. And the pain to the pleasure is sun the candle. Joy never kills, you know. The most violent joy never drove anyone mad. Pain kills, and pain drives mad, and extreme pain can feed for days on the stretched flesh. The extremes of pleasure rot in 2 minutes. Oh, yes, but Michael, surely life's good? My father, his thoughts were deep, patient and wise, believed it was good because it was growing. At first it was a morsel of slime on the sea. It grew to be worms and fishes, lizards and snakes. You see the progress. Then things with hair and hot blood. It was coming up from the ocean and climbing mountains, subduing the earth, molding its bundle of nerves into the magnificent mind of man, and passing beyond man to more wonders. That helped my father. He loved that. You and me, of course, can't help, because we know nothing goes on forever. What good is better and better if best drawn blank? Here's the oak, was growing upward 100 years, and now it withers. Sometime the world will change, only a little too hot or too cold or too dry, and then life will go like the oak. Then what will all my father's magnificent thoughts, Michael, and all the dreams of your children be worth? Well, we must praise life for some other reason. For surely it's good? We know it must be. Here every morning you bring food to this bird to keep it alive. Because you love it in its filth and misery and prison. What's wretcheder than a caged eagle? Guess. I'll not tell. And you'd be bitter cruel to keep it alive. Sick-feathered, abject, broken-armed. Only you know life is so good. It's true, the creature seems ungrateful, but I am not grateful either, to Dante Vitello, who pumped the breath into my body. She stopped and looked at Michael's white face and said, You haven't heard from Hood yet. He went so suddenly, he ought to write you, Michael said. No, said Farah. You know nothing about him? She cried, trembling. Why do you ask about Hood? Why do you ask about Hood? Let me alone. Ah, Farah said. Do you think that something has happened to him? He'll never come back. It was your fault. I'm sure he'll never come back, she said with a still face. Now let's go down. But I can't joke about your eagle, Michael. The hopeless cage of pain is a lamp shining rays that go right through the flesh and etch the secrets of bone. Mine aches. Oh no, Michael, I couldn't do it. But George would kill him for you. Or ask your father. That's better. Those are the hands. Another morning, Pharaoh went up secretly under the redwoods to the rock's foot, where the great ribbed and battering granite face came down and found earth. In spring, the cliff swallows nest a third of the way up, and a pair of duck hawks 2/3 of the way. High in the air, the gray dome seemed swaying from the sweep of the small fibrous clouds. Farah crept back and forth at the foot with pale, spying eyes. But this loose earth was only a squirrel's mound, and that was a gopher's digging, for hours, and she found stones had been rolled together, their brown earth bellies turned up to the sky, and the gray lichenous backs downward. There was fresh earth below, with grass blades half buried and ferns trampled. One rain had fallen. She stood and gazed and said to him, "There, did I not say beforehand that after we were dead I should have no rest after all, but run moaning on the grey shore, gnawing for my hunger a wrist of shadow?" She found a brown scurf on the sloped rocks above and thought, "This is the blood that burst from your mouth when you fell," caressing with hers the doubtful crust that was really a brown lichen. "Oh, why would you not listen to me? You chose to die rather than live. Ah, you'd learned wisdom somewhere. You were too young to be wise, when with one beautiful act of delight, lovely to the giver as the taker, you might have made a star for yourself, and for me salvation." She rose and said to the grave, "It was I that killed you. The old man who lives in hell for it was only my hands." Yeah, she was a cruel one, little Pharaoh. All right, Bubs, that's all. Goodbye. For now. Goodbye.